Hey everyone, don't really have a super clever, creative, or funny intro for this video. Sorry about that if you were expecting one of those, but I feel like I don't really have as much to say in this intro, so I'm just gonna jump right in. Welcome back to another multi-album review. Second week in a row doing one of these, that's kind of crazy. Both of these albums I mentioned in my last video that I was gonna be reviewing in this video, and of course they both came out as planned, no delays, so I listened to them both, and now I'm here to give you my opinions on them. As you can tell from the title, these are the two albums that we are going to be talking about in this video. The new Lil Yachty album, Lil Boat 3, and the new Lady Gaga album, Chromatica. Kind of like last week, it's funny because we have a hip-hop record and a pop record. These two albums are just entirely different in almost every way, shape, and form. Fortunately, after last week's video saw me giving two awful ratings and really not liking either of the records, I can say that in some ways this week is a little bit of an improvement, though I will say that both these albums share in the feeling of disappointment. That's all I'll say right now. Let us just get into the reviews so I can tell you guys why these two records are so disappointing. Leading things off, I'm going to start by talking about Lil Yachty's new album, Lil Boat 3. Lil Yachty, if you don't know, is an Atlanta rapper who broke out back in 2016 alongside many other SoundCloud artists. He had some good success with his first mixtape, Lil Boat, which actually did receive some pretty good reviews, but since then it seems like he has just been on a bit of a steady decline with his next records, Teenage Emotions, Lil Boat 2, and especially Nothing to Prove. I would say that he kind of bottomed out with Nothing to Prove. I felt like the goofy oddball charm that made some of Yachty's early music so interesting was just gone. I did review both Lil Boat 2 and Nothing to Prove, and you can check out those reviews at the link in the description. This record right here is supposedly the final installment in Lil Yachty's Lil Boat saga, and it's been rumored for a while, but after releasing two albums in 2018, it seems like last year he took the year off from releasing albums, which I was hoping would fuel a good recharge on the album, but I did get a bit worried when I saw that the record was 19 tracks and 53 minutes, already longer than the bloated Lil Boat 2 and Nothing to Prove. So I was worried that we were gonna get another quantity over quality project out of Yachty, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, but that is exactly what he's given us here. Another record that is more about quantity than it's about quality. I will say that right away, the intro track, Top Down, definitely feels more immediate and fun than some of Yachty's recent work. It's a punchy, energetic banger with some of the goofy vocals that we expect out of Yachty, and is something of a hyper collision between his old and new sound. I'd say it works well. I also thought that Lemonhead was a pretty enjoyable track. Instrumentally, it's easily one of the best songs this album has to offer, and I think Yachty vocally sounds like he's having some fun. Vocally, there are some goofy moments, but I do enjoy those moments a lot, and I think that's where Yachty comes through the most for me. Unfortunately, outside of those few highlights, this album mostly just falls flat, and there are a few too many duds on it for me. Walkin' Stock is an early snooze, as while I like Yachty's vocals and flows on the track, the beat feels pretty standard and basic to the point where I thought I was just listening to an extension of the record's opening track. The single Split/Hold Time started pretty strong. The first part has some of the nice carefree vibes that I like on a very light instrumental, but I wasn't really in love with the beat switch on the song. I've always found that Yachty isn't quite as strong over darker instrumentals, and while this isn't one of the worst moments of Yachty trying to spit over a darker instrumental, I don't think it's as good as some of the oddball tracks that I think fit his style better. And sadly, what I found as we moved along in the album is that Yachty really wanted to stick to those darker sounds, and that he was pretty content to recycle some vibes on this album. Tracks like Black Jesus, From Down Bad, and West Side all see Yachty rapping over these standard, darker trap beats that honestly I just don't think fit him very well. I'm not mad at his choice to rap over instrumentals like these, but damn, I miss the Yachty that stood out and felt like a distinct, fresh voice. Even though I know people weren't crazy about a track like Bring It Back, for example, from his record Teenage Emotions. I don't mind that song, to be honest. And I've enjoyed tracks like One Night and She Ready, just for how carefree and goofy they were. I don't begrudge Yachty for moving away from those types of tracks, but I personally thought that they had sounded fresh, and it's sad that Yachty now seems content to just sound like everything out there, and that he's kind of eschewed being a recognizable fresh voice in favor of just fitting in with what sounds hot. Yachty is also no stranger to adding very short tracks to the album. In fact, most of his albums have a lot of songs on them, but often the overall songs are shorter than 3 minutes, and while that brevity could be alright in some cases, I think it makes tracks like Love Jones, Can't Go, Don't Forget, and Up There Music just feel like completely insubstantial throwaways that probably shouldn't have even made it onto the album in the first place. Though, that Metroid Prime shoutout, I respect that. Yachty isn't really too shy about adding features here either, but I would say most of these collaborations kind of missed the mark. The track TD features appearances from all of Tierra Whack, A$AP Rocky, and Tyler the Creator. Pretty crazy combination if you ask me. Honestly, I'm glad that this track had all those features because I think all three of them sound better than Yachty does. The instrumental has this cutthroat kind of sneaky piano instrumental, and I think Yachty's hook and attempt at some fast flows at the beginning just sound kind of messy. A$AP's relaxed vibe and the creative ever-changing flows from Tyler and Tierra just fit the song better. It's sad to say, but it honestly feels like it would have been a better song if Yachty wasn't on it. Then there's the Mike Will Made It produced track Pardon Me featuring Future, who honestly takes up so much of the song he makes Yachty feel like a feature on his very own track. Yachty sounds fine, the beat's loud and over the top a bit, Future's chorus is repetitive and boring but his verse is kinda cool. It's just a mixed bag of a track. The following cut, Demon Time, has an appearance from Draft Day, which honestly might be one of the most boring tracks on the album. Yachty and Draft Day's kinda rambly, faster flows don't sound bad, but man, tracks like this are why I miss when Yachty was more willing to rap and croon over more colorful production. The leadoff single, Oprah's Bank Account, has guest spots from Drake and DaBaby, and I personally wasn't totally crazy about the song when I first heard it, and now listening to it in the context of the album, it's better than a lot of what else is here, but that doesn't really make it great. The beat's a little more mellow than some of the others here, which is nice. Yachty's smooth vocals work even if the chorus isn't all that catchy. Drake sounds alright even if his appearance is a bit small, and DaBaby's verse is a complete throwaway, honestly the worst part of the track for me. Range Rover Sports Truck has a guest appearance from Lil Keed, and I'll admit this has one of the more colorful beats on the album, and I think that Yachty and Keed have some good interplay with their auto-tune heavy vocals, though I think the song is definitely held back by how repetitive the hook is. It's not a bad song, but some of the replay value is definitely taken away by that chorus. And near the tail end of the album, Young Thug and Lil Durk fly in for Till the Morning, which I think is a surprisingly pretty solid song and maybe the best collaboration on the record. I love the bright, sunny, and beachy vibes of the song. Lil Durk and Yachty's combined chorus is really catchy, and I think Young Thug flows really well on his verse. Honestly, I feel like it's a track that feels like fireworks compared to the album surrounding it. And it's sad because this record also ends pretty poorly. I was excited about the track Woo Chile when Yachty described the instrumental as being reminiscent of Nintendo 64 games. Not so much for the gamer in me, but more so just because I feel like that was what made a track like She Ready so successful. But honestly, I feel like the beat didn't do enough with those vibes to succeed, and neither did Yachty on the vocals. And then the closer, Concrete Boys, is damn near mind-numbing. It sounds so similar to so many of the other tracks here, I was less interested in the song itself, and more impressed that Yachty was somehow able to get 19 tracks that sounded so similar onto this project. Overall, you guys know there have been a lot of albums this year I just have not liked, and if you're keeping score of all those albums at home, I'm afraid you're gonna have to add another one to the list. I was excited for this album. I was hoping that Yachty would have taken that time off to think about what didn't work for Lil Boat 2 and Nothing to Prove, but no. Instead, it just feels like he took the approach that didn't work on those records and then just tripled down on it. This was one of those really bad albums where, unlike some others that I've reviewed this year, it's hard for me to get really mad at it because it didn't really make me angry. Rather, it just kind of demoralized me. As polarizing as Yachty is, I've enjoyed some of the goofy charm of some of his old tracks. As I've mentioned several times, tracks like One Night and She Ready, I've continued to listen to even to this day. Sure, his songs are dumb, but the goofy, weird feel of them added to the charm for me. But with his 2018 records, Lil Boat 2 and Nothing to Prove, I felt like Yachty was moving away from that sound a good bit, and while that isn't a bad thing, it felt like his records were becoming more homogenized and sanitized. In other words, he was just kind of sounding like everyone out there. He went from being one of hip-hop's most oddly charming voices to just another voice. Another standard, we've all heard it before kind of voice. With this record, it feels like he unfortunately continues in that direction. Few, if any, of the beats on here match the color of some of Yachty's old tracks, and vocally, outside of a few moments, it feels like he lacks the fun that made some of his early projects and singles so interesting. At this point, I can't help but feel a little sad, because more and more I'm starting to feel like the first Lil Boat was just a bit of a fluke for Yachty. He's reached a point where he can afford to be complacent with his music, and you just kind of hate to see it. Whether it's his choice to be complacent, or if there's some kind of label intrusion causing it, at the end of the day, Yachty's new direction isn't working for me, and it feels like he's having a hard time proving that he'll ever catch lightning in a bottle again like he did on Lil Boat. I didn't want to give it this rating, but overall, Lil Yachty's Lil Boat 3 is gonna get an awful rating from me. Another awful rating. There's been a lot of those this year. It's kind of crazy. And as I said, unfortunately, you can add one more to that list. Even as I mentioned at the beginning of the video that both albums that I'll be talking about today disappointed me, at least we can end the video with a record that was not awful, because moving right along, we are going to be talking about the new Lady Gaga album, Chromatica. I don't need to introduce Lady Gaga to you guys. She has been one of the biggest pop stars of the 2010s. You guys know her. You probably love her. She's pretty iconic. In recent years, it feels like Lady Gaga has tried to step out of her lane a bit. 2016's Joanne was an album where she kind of stripped away her character that she created for herself in her songs. And after that record's success, thanks in no small part to the Billboard Top 10 peaking track Million Reasons, which was fantastic, she ventured into acting a bit with the much beloved film A Star Is Born, which even earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. She also contributed to the soundtrack of the film, notably earning yet another Billboard Hot 100 #1 single in Shallow with Bradley Cooper. And thanks to the combined success of the film and its soundtrack, Lady Gaga became the first woman to win an Academy Award, a Grammy, a BAFTA, and a Golden Globe in the same year. Obviously, Gaga's legacy is massive. She's widely loved, and that's why many of us were pretty excited when she released the lead-off single for this thing, Stupid Love. And that excitement grew to a fever pitch when we learned that she would be collaborating with Ariana Grande on the track Rain on Me, a single that was a combination of two of the biggest pop stars of the 2010s. I'll be honest, I've never really heard a full Gaga album before, but I've obviously heard plenty of her singles and I've always respected her work from afar. So I was pretty excited going into this record. It's 16 tracks in 43 minutes, which might seem a bit long, but Gaga does extend the track list a little bit with 3 instrumental Chromatica passages. And while these tracks, I suppose, lead tastefully into the 3 sections of the album, they don't really sound much different when you place them side to side. And given that each of them is a minute or less, they don't leave much of an impression for me. If anything, hearing the rest of the album around them, these sections and passages feel kind of flimsy and make this seem like a concept album that's in search of its concept a little bit. As for the music itself, it's very clear with this record that Gaga is trying to take a full-blown step back into the electronic pop songs that we came to know her for early on. While some of her recent records like Joanne and the soundtrack for A Star Is Born felt a little bit more country influenced, here Lady Gaga is taking a full-blown trip back into the world of electropop and dance pop. Does it work? Well, sort of. The first proper song on the album, Alice, is an homage to Alice in Wonderland, and it's an EDM-influenced throwback that doesn't bring much new to the table, but if nothing else, it's catchy, the chorus is fun, and it's structured well enough to work despite its repetitiveness. Then there's the aforementioned lead-off single, Stupid Love, which I enjoyed when I first heard it, and I still do really like it now. It's a pretty infectious disco throwback with some colorful samplings on the instrumental, and I think the song is a very nice showcase of Gaga's vocals as well. I also like the track Free Woman, as while its understated blend of EDM and house might not be brand new, I think it proves to be a perfect playground for Gaga to run wild vocally, and I think her vocals on this track are some of my favorites on the album. Even Fun Tonight was a pretty enjoyable song. The hook was a little bit awkward at first, and it took some time to grow on me, but I do love the emotional, mellow vibes of the song, and Gaga's vocals help make it a pretty solid emotional bop, even if it does sound a bit too similar to many of the other tracks here. Near the end of the album, there is the track 1,000 Dubs, which is probably the closest thing that we get to a ballad on the album, but even it has more punch and emotional energy than most ballads do. Still, it works extremely well thanks in no small part to, again, Gaga's lovely vocals, and the fact that the song has one of the most catchy and beautiful choruses on the album. I was surprised also that Lady Gaga brought in some pretty huge features with this record. As I mentioned, the single Rain on Me features Ariana Grande, in a pop collaboration I'm sure many have been waiting for. I did miss this track when it came out as a single, but hearing it in the context of the album, I do enjoy it. Ariana and Gaga work very well together vocally, the uplifting lyrics are nice, and even if the instrumental isn't anything completely new, it's bouncy and pumping enough, and it's helped by the fact that its 2 stars do very well with it. The song Sour Candy features an appearance from South Korean girl group Blackpink, and I was pleasantly surprised by the song. It's a very sassy, attitude-filled pop track with a dark vibe to it, and even with some of Gaga's vocals being a bit understated, I think that works to the song's benefit since it adds to the attitude of it. The Blackpink girls sound great as they tear down the stereotype of women needing to be sweet and smiling all the time, and to me it's definitely one of the more potent cuts on the album. Even Sign From Above features vocals from the legendary Elton John, and the song itself starts off feeling a bit more downbeat and angelic compared to most of what else he here, though it does take some twists and feels like a head-bobbing dance banger with a bit of a twist at the end. I very much like the song though. The beat drop is very tasteful, and I think Gaga and Elton sell the song on their vocals alone. Their chemistry is fantastic, and the other sonic elements of the track combine together to form a great collaboration. Unfortunately though, there are definitely some detours on this album that I am not crazy about. I had been noticing that so many of the songs did sound similar even in the first section of the album, but 911 was the first song that I could have done without, even if the instrumental had a bit more character to it than some of the others. I'm not totally in love with some of the robotic filters on Gaga's vocals, and I think the track has one of the weaker choruses on the album. Some of those filters do work a little bit better on the track Plastic Doll, which has some interesting lyrical allusions to how Gaga fits into the objectified female pop star archetype. But while I love Gaga's more powerful vocals and the occasional mellow trail-offs in the song, I again think it lacks a really strong hook, and that holds it back for me. Enigma slows things down just a little bit, but honestly, maybe it's just because it comes right after Sour Candy and sounded so similar that I didn't really fall for it. Gaga's vocals are definitely impassioned, but the chorus just feels bland. And it's another one of those tracks that just kind of blends in with a lot of what surrounds it. Replay lyrically is a brave song where Gaga makes some allusions to her old track Monster and speaks a bit about trauma and PTSD. And I think the writing is great, I just wish I enjoyed the music around it a little bit more. The beat is pumping, Gaga's vocals sound good, but this is another track that doesn't really grab me or have a very strong hook to it. It's definitely not bad, and I applaud Gaga's writing and lyrical themes on the track, but as a song, it's just not one of my favorites here. Not even the closer to the album, Babylon, really grabbed me. While I like some of the allusions to the ancient city of Babylon, and the whole double entendre of Babylon and babble on as gossip, the banging instrumentals just feel like so much of what else was on the album. And yeah, Gaga's speak singing vocals have their charisma, and I can imagine people really liking the song, but honestly, it just doesn't excite me. I personally could have chosen 1,000 Doves as the closer to the album over this one. Overall, I'd say that Gaga's new album is a bit of a mixed bag to me. Going off of this idea that the album is divided into 3 sections, I'd say that the first and third sections are good outside of Babylon, but the record is bogged down by how unexciting the second part is outside of Sour Candy. And honestly, even if we go off this idea of having 3 parts, I didn't really notice 3 distinct sounds on this album. A number of them just kind of meshed together to the point where they sounded so similar, and I didn't really think I was listening to an album that was divided into 3 parts. Sonically, I don't think there's a whole lot of variation on the record, and much of it sounds like a throwback, but without much in the way of expanding upon old ideas. Some of it does just feel like it wears the old school influences on its sleeve just a little too hard, and doesn't do enough to modernize those influences, thus leaving it as a record that just feels a little too stuck in the past. In this case, that's not totally a bad thing. I think a number of the tracks are lifted heavily by Gaga's vocals, and the features are pretty sharp, but in the end, it just reads as a little too hit or miss for me. It's not bad, and if you're a hardcore Gaga fan who has been patiently waiting for her next move, you will definitely love this, but if not, I'd say just pick a few tracks and roll with those. There are some highs on here, but I don't think this will go down as Gaga's best work. Overall, I am gonna say that Lady Gaga's Chromatica is gonna get an okay rating from me. I'm a bit disappointed, I wish I liked it a little bit better, but it's definitely not bad. I know it will satisfy our hardcore fans, and if you're not a hardcore fan, hopefully there'll at least be a few tracks that you can pull from it and enjoy. There are definitely some highs on the record, but I think it could have been tightened up at least a little bit. So yeah, that's this week's 2 albums. Not nearly as much anger or frustration as last week, but unfortunately some disappointment. I can say it definitely could have gone worse though. But those are just my opinions on these records. Which of them did you guys listen to, and what were your thoughts on them? Did you enjoy these more than I did? Did you share in my disappointment? Are you just indifferent and kind of ignoring both of them? Whatever your thoughts are, leave them down in the comments. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. In terms of what's next, I'm not totally sure. I was just looking at what's supposed to be coming out this June, and I'm not gonna lie, there's not a whole lot that's totally interesting me, which in this case I'm kind of okay with because I have a bunch of 10 years later videos that I plan to do this month. Not only that, but my anxiety has been very high and I need to give myself some mental rest because my mental health has not been great for this entire year, so I think I just need to give myself some rest. So if June is a bit slower in terms of videos, sorry about that, but I'll still try to give you guys some content to rock with throughout this month. So stay tuned for those new videos, but until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.